Welcome back, everybody. Hot Mic rolls on this Monday morning. Jeff Kolpak apparently will join us on vacation coming up in a half hour. It is Monday at 9:30, and newly married, and off of honeymoon, Sam Herder joins us from Hero Sports. BetMGM joins us each and every Monday to chat about everything going on, FCS football. First off, congratulations. Second, even more so, your travel was fantastic compared to mine, so I'm very envious of that. Third, I'm even prouder of you that you avoided all social media when you were on your honeymoon. So congratulations on that, most importantly.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, all smooth travels for us. I went to Maui, so that was a heck of a time. And
Nice.
yeah, it was the last month of June, so I knew there was going to be a lot of news out there. So I mostly stayed unplugged, but just kind of had like a Cliff Notes version on my phone of everything that was going on. And I set the over under for realignment of 5.5
Yep.
conference changes. And I think technically we did hit the over just because of the UAC taking some ASUN teams and fully forming. But I definitely think the over was hit on those realignment changes while I was gone.
All right, well, let's start there because I saw that and I was bitterly disappointed that the Summit League and the Missouri Valley Football Conference got nothing. Were you surprised on that?
I was. I thought the Summit League and the Valley would be able to get, at least the Utah schools, if not,
Yeah.
the Texas schools. But I know the Texas schools wanted to stick together, and they formed a nice partnership between the ASUN and the WAC, just so the ASUN is no longer going to sponsor football, but all their basketball members are staying there. And then the WAC is. We all thought the WAC was going to die,
Yeah.
and it didn't, but the name died because now they're fully rebranding to the United Athletic Conference. And then the Big Sky adds Utah Tech and Southern Utah. That was a bit of a surprise to me just because I thought they could have gone without adding when Sacramento State decided to leave. But then, I only pay attention to football. Then I learned, well, some of their other sports needed to beef up their numbers just because of the NCAA minimum of 6 teams. So Southern Utah, I know, burned some bridges on their way out a few years ago, but they got brought back in. Utah Tech gets brought in as well. From a football perspective, I don't like that move a whole lot just because it does water down the Big Sky Conference. Southern Utah has been decent. Utah Tech hasn't been. So, I mean, we give the CAA flack for adding members that don't add much
Correct.
value. I mean, the Big Sky kind of did the same thing, but I understand it. It wasn't necessarily a football only move. It was, I think, like baseball and golf is what needed some or not baseball. I can't remember what sports it was.
I think softball and men's soccer were
softball.
two big ones that I know that they were looking at there.
Yeah.
It brings it up to 13 football members. And we've said it, we've talked about it in your segment. I wanted no part of the Utah schools in the Summit or the Missouri Valley Football Conference. I will say Southern Utah has a new AD, new president. They are under some investigation. That's why I thought there was some, for Title IX stuff, that I thought that there was maybe too many red flags for anybody to consider them. But the Big Sky decided to go back home again.
Yeah, Southern Utah was their AD has since. I mean, they spun it that he resigns. I really think it was if you don't
fired.
resign, we're probably going to let you go. But they, spun it in the press release as something different. But yeah, it was. I don't know specifically what it was. I think it was just kind of Title IX, athletic department culture type of investigation. It was funny because Brett McMurphy, tweeted out that this is what was going on, and then Southern Utah's AD at the time said this is false reporting, and like everyone in the know is like, no, this is what is going on. And then he resigns, a few months later, or a couple of months later. So yeah, Southern Utah has been going through some stuff internally, but I think the Big Sky kind of felt good in adding some numbers, especially like we said for some of those other sports.
So the thing I got asked about this the following day or days after is, what does the Valley do now? And we talked about it on this show. I don't know what there is. There's nothing. There's no other real schools in the so-called footprint for the Missouri Valley Football Conference, which now is at 10 members, with Missouri State moving on to Conference USA. The Summit League is still at 9. I don't know where else they go, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, 10 members, I think, is a good number for football. 9 for the Summit League, I think, is I mean, you probably want
You
even
want
numbers,
even
but like 9, you're still fine. I mean, there's some conferences out there that have 7 members, and what is the minimum? I think 6
6. Yep.
to retain your auto bids into NCAA tournaments, and so you're still probably sitting fine with 9. But with realignment, you just never know, especially with mid-major basketball. It seems like teams are switching conferences a lot, and so for the Summit League, if you lose a couple of members, then you're up against it as well. And so that's why I thought maybe the Summit and the Valley football would be a bit aggressive, and maybe they were aggressive and they just couldn't land a couple of teams. But I thought they had a prime opportunity to add some teams, and then for whatever reason that those additions just didn't work out.
I don't like Lindenwood doesn't interest me. I don't know where else they go. I really don't know what the league does going forward.
Yeah, you probably imagine that they would stand pat,
Yeah.
and just not make any additions. Northern Colorado, I know that was mentioned last
Yep.
week as not like it's out there. There's no smoke out there that Northern Colorado would actually join, but as far as just fits that could happen, Northern Colorado would be one. But I don't know if that really, it certainly doesn't move the needle for football.
Nope.
I don't know what Northern Colorado is like for its other sports, but if you want to get to 10 members, if you're the Summit League and you really want to add a member, maybe you go after them. But it seems like Northern Colorado would be perfectly comfortable staying in the Big Sky.
Yeah, and I'm not too jazzed on that one either, considering they haven't been good in football ever in the Division I era, and for their other sports, not great there either. So maybe we'll find out. Valley Media Day is a couple weeks from now. Okay, so we're a week removed from the deadline to decide. I believe Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports reported 319 of the Division I schools decided to opt in, Sam, and we had some unbelievable reversals. We were visiting off air. Montana, which was firmly in the no category of not opting in, decides in a last minute they decided to opt in, which I saw that as I was traveling Monday. I'm like, oh, okay, well, apparently they had the reversal. I was really interested because almost everybody pointed to the grandfathering in of the roster cuts because you can't do it next year. If you don't do it now, then you automatically got to get down to football at 105.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was on the show before the grandfathering in of rosters was allowed. I think we all agree there was probably no right or wrong decision to opt in or opt out. But once the grandfathering in of roster spots was allowed, and not only that, but I know it was confirmed elsewhere, but like I reached out as well because I thought it was a very important detail. If you don't opt in this year, but you opt in next year, can you grandfather in next year? Like that's a very, very important detail. And as we know, this is your only window to grandfather in those roster spots. And so even when up until the last minute, when or not the last minute, but the last day or so, last few days, when South Dakota State was still considering it and NDSU was still considering it, and I know Montana a few days before the deadline said they were still going to opt out until the last day. Then they opted in, and I was kind of sitting there thinking, the ADs know way more than I do, and they know all the finer details more than any of us. But I just kept on scratching my head going, especially for the schools that said we might not opt in this year, but next year, I was kind of just going, why would you do that? Because you just wasted a 4 or 5 year runway to be above the roster limits. Now, if you're school A and you're already at 106 football players, and you're already at, maybe you're just one more player over for basketball and, 4 more over for track and field, like those roster cuts aren't as drastic. But for some schools, they would have had to cut 15 football players and 3 basketball players and 10 soccer players, whatever the case may be. So it just really never made sense to me why a school would opt out this year, but opt in next year. And so that's why I think you saw so many reversals of teams deciding to, or schools deciding to opt in, whereas a month ago, they were definitely leaning toward opting out.
I am really interested. I don't know, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, and this is going to be my final point on this because I want to not talk about it anymore, of how many FCS schools actually go beyond 65 scholarships. If I were to, you're talking about under over on how many teams we're going to move in realignment. Maybe 5. It can't be. I don't think it's going to be that many.
Yeah, and the Big Sky in the SoCon in the Patriot League kept their scholarship minimum at 63 equivalencies. No scholarship caps, SWAC, Southland, CAA, OVC, Big South. in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. Some of the other ones I'm not too sure about. I know the UAC was still deciding, and so we've talked about this before, but theoretically, there could be FCS schools that go above 63 scholarships. But scholarships are expensive, especially when you factor in Title IX. And even the SEC, they set their cap at 85,
Right.
I believe, unless they changed that within the last few months. But even the SEC is going, whoa, we're not going to go to 105 football scholarships because that's a lot of money. And so I know a lot of fans jump out there and say, wait, so Valley teams could go to 105 scholarships. Meanwhile, the Big Sky would be stuck at 63. Theoretically, yes, but that's millions of dollars in scholarship money there. And so, I mean, I tweeted this out too. The strategy here is going to be difficult and will probably be different for every mid-major school. Is what is better? If you have $1 million, just you raise $1 million or you move $1 million from here to here, what's better, adding more scholarships or just putting that money into revenue share? So for NDSU, what's better, having 80 scholarships or just having 63 scholarships and being able to pay those 63 guys on scholarship or equivalency guys, whatever it is, more money? Like, what's more valuable, having more scholarships or more money to share? That you can make an argument, either way. I would maybe argue it's better to just pay your top guys more money rather than putting that money towards scholarship. But that's kind of an interesting decision that schools are going to make, which, by the way, these schools don't have a whole lot of extra money to be doing this anyways. So.
Last thing before I let you go, there is apparently another portal window that's going to open next week, according to several sources. These are for the players that have been designated as they were grandfathered in, like your spot is eventually going to be gone, that you can transfer for the next month from, and I believe it starts a week from today, so it'll be July 14th to early August, which I'm interested now that I don't know what kind of players could be out there, Sam, but we could have, fall camp starts July 30th here in town, so we could have more player movement here over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, there might be a little bit, but it's not going to be any headline names or top players because this is just for, like you said, the designated players. And designated players means, if your player is 106 through 120 on your roster, you're beyond the roster limit. But since you're grandfathered in, you are now designated. The NCAA created a new transfer portal window for these players just in case. Yes, you are grandfathered in, but schools might say, hey, yeah, you're grandfathered in, but we're going to cut things down slowly. So if you want to go now, we'll help you land at your next school. So if you're a Power 4 player, you're player 111, you're grandfathered in, but you're designated, but the school kind of goes, it might be better for you to move on. We'll help you land at an FCS school. Or if you're an FCS player, you're player 110. Hey, if you want more playing time, it's your junior year. You might be cut sooner than later.
Right.
Like, we'll help you land at a D2 school. So I know a lot of fans saw a new portal window and kind of freaked out, but I think a coach called it a nothing burger because it's going to be walk-ons that, might get kind of pushed into this portal window, and we'll help you land at a school where you can play more. So it's a big deal for those players, but for fans and media, I don't think we'll notice a whole lot of moves, or notable moves, I should say.
All right, I promise next week we'll actually talk about stuff on the field. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that sounds good with me. Let's do it.
We've talked all about this for the last couple months. Now it's done. Now we'll see. I'm really interested to actually see how this affects for donors. Are they going to give more now? And this is our poll question we'll have after you're gone, Sam. I'm interested. Do donors give more now that they full on know the school can directly pay the athlete? I'm really interested in that.
I would say, like, there are probably some donors that are maybe hard-headed or whatever you want to call it. Like, they just want to donate toward scholarships and facilities, and that's fine. But when it comes to paying players, there might be some that, like, third-party collectives, I don't know, how's that money exchange hands? What's the process there? Donate it right to schools. There's a more comfort factor. Plus, there's tax incentives, tax write-offs there as well. So I do think more fans would be willing to donate to schools instead of going through this third-party collective.
It's great to see you, Buck. Congratulations again. Hope you had a great time, and we'll see you next week, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Sam Herder back with us on this Monday morning, trying to decipher now that we are post-deadline and post-settlement decision on what went down. Again, and there was a few schools that actually decided to not opt in terms of into the settlement. Incarnate Word was one, which I thought was interesting. UC Davis decided to opt out. Central Arkansas opted out. Those schools, which are traditional, pretty good football programs, decided to opt out of the settlement. Again, from Ross Dellinger, 319 schools opted in for the settlement. And we'll show you that graphic coming up later on in the show. We'll have more time in about 10:30 or so. All right, we'll break. We come back. We'll wrap up what's been an eventful first hour on the show. Back on Hot Mic right after this on WDAY Extra, WDAY Plus, and Inforum.com.